Hi, and welcome to Community Buzz. My name is Bob Spang, 8-year resident of Mystic, and today we're going to talk about Ukrainian relief efforts. I've been involved in Ukrainian relief efforts since 2023, most recently in Kyiv with the Kyiv Kitchen Hub. And today with me is Carl Harvey and Myron Melnick of the New Haven, Connecticut, Ukrainian American Humanitarian Aid Fund. And they have created an organization back in 2022, and since then have acquired, donated medical supplies, hygiene-related equipment, and so forth of over $9 million that they so far have sent to Ukraine in the relief efforts. They're also involved in a major fundraiser that's going to happen on the 26th of this month that's going to benefit the Ukrainian soldiers who've been wounded. And that's called the Wounds to Wonder effort. So they will talk about that, and they're also helping myself and Lou Manzi, a gentleman from Stonington, Connecticut, with a benefit we're doing for the Ukrainians this June on June 5th. So I'm going to start with you, Carl. I want to ask you what your connection to Ukraine is, how you became involved in the organization, your role, and how the invasion affected you.
Well, I am not Ukrainian. I married into the culture in 1964. And in 1991, we organized a Ukrainian American Veterans Post in New Haven. And yours truly was a senior person in it, so I was made commander of the post. So ever since, the post has been working on various projects, helping Ukraine or helping other veterans here in the United States. So,
Okay. And how did your organization get started?
This organization, we've originally began after the 2014 invasion by Putin into Crimea. And we began working with Senator Richard Blumenthal on developing legislation and other things that would help Ukraine. Senator Blumenthal has been to Ukraine 7 times already, and he has some personal connections there as well. So,
Beautiful, beautiful. And what have you been able to accomplish since you've started your organization?
Well, we've been since we started this organization, the New Haven, Connecticut Ukrainian American Humanitarian Aid Program. We've started out collecting anything and everything that anyone wanted to donate to Ukraine. We had put it in, haul it down to Dnipro in New Jersey, which is the shipping company that we send everything over through. And now we've kind of scaled back to just sending over medical supplies and medical equipment. Our contact person in Ukraine is Father Roman Manulak, who is an Orthodox priest, and he's a direct relative of my housekeeper, Nadia Ivansev, and working through him, he took me to one of the military veterans hospitals right near where he lives, and I had a tour of the facility, and I talked to the director, Maxim Prikopenko, and we figured out, what we could best send over to them to help the hospital out. So our first shipment went over to them. Since then, we've been sending shipments again to Father Roman, and he has a group of volunteers who helps spread everything throughout the whole country and even to the front lines.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how many people are involved in your organization?
That varies depending on the activity. what'd you say, Myron, maybe about 20 total. We're all volunteers. We had been meeting generally on Tuesdays, Tuesday afternoon, evening, and then on Saturdays to collect and sort all of the items, and then package them, do the inventory sheets that have to be included to the shipping company, so they'd be able to get through customs in both in Ukraine and in Poland.
Yeah. And besides this upcoming fundraiser that you have, where I understand the Ukrainians are the wounded Ukrainians from the military are going to be sending over their artwork, and this is a show and a sale. And I'm wondering how many other fundraisers you've actually had that are similar to this, or other fundraisers in general.
Well, our fundraising began when we first organized the organization in 2022, and it's been a continuous putting out letters requesting funding, and we provided them with 3 different ways of getting the funding to us, such as mailing them through, sending them through the mail, or we also had a QR code which they could send them in. This group is actually made up of the 3 organizations. One is my Ukrainian Veterans Post, the other is St. Michael's Ukrainian Catholic Church, and the third is the Knights Columbus Council, which is affiliated with the church. So it's all of us reaching out.
Right. Nice. And can you tell us a little bit more about your network over in Ukraine and the contact that you have there and how that works?
Well, as I mentioned before, Father Roman took us and took me to this veterans hospital, and through my discussions with the director of the hospital, we decided on what types of things we would send over. So our first shipment went directly to that hospital. Since then, we've been sending over up to 14 containers worth of medical supplies and everything else. And Father has receives a container at a warehouse, and then he has this whole network of volunteers that takes the equipment and other materials to to other hospitals throughout the country, to medical facilities out on the front line, and also he set up hubs in the community centers in the various villages and so forth, where he drops stuff off and so forth. When more recently, however, we decided that we're just going to focus on medical supplies, medical equipment, and the money that we save from by not shipping over the other stuff, we send directly to Father Roman, so that he can then buy things that are being requested, like medicine or dehumidifier or generators, or that type of thing.
Right. And Myron, if I could ask you a couple of questions regarding your role in the organization. I forgot to mention before that that Carl is the president and Myron is the vice president.
Well, that's my role. As Carl mentioned, we're both veterans. He in the Navy, I'm in the Army. And really, our efforts began there 10 years ago when Russia annexed Crimea and started the war in the southeast of Ukraine. So our veterans organization became active to help Ukraine in that situation. And as Carl mentioned, we have worked with our legislators here in Connecticut, especially Senator Blumenthal, as Carl mentioned, but also Representative Courtney, who has been our main contact person and leader in the House of Representatives, where he is in the House Armed Services Committee. And that's very important to know because the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee together collectively work on funding the military, the Pentagon. And as part of that legislation, which is actually being finalized right now as we speak, called the National Defense Authorization Act, as part of that legislation, there's a section there on helping Ukraine militarily.
Beautiful.
So we have been involved with that since 2014, as Carl has mentioned. So with our veterans group, Carl got the idea that we should have a fund now that there's a war in 2022, and we brought in other organizations because we needed the manpower and we needed the support. And our fund now, it's a nonprofit, a 501c3, and we have been continuously raising funds because we're always shipping, we're always doing special projects. This one that we're talking about today is just one additional project. As Carl mentioned, we've shipped medical supplies, we've shipped medications, we've helped purchase medicines that are hard to come by, and we've done other projects. For example, a couple winters ago when the Russians knocked out power for an orphanage in Western Ukraine, they appealed to us to provide a generator, an industrial grade generator to make it through the winter. So we had an ad hoc fundraiser to raise $16,000 to get that installed right away because it was winter time. So they sourced it and were able to install it, and we were very happy that this orphanage, has heat now. We're still doing some other things with that orphanage. Just recently, we helped kind of remodel a section of their kitchen because things were in disrepair. So we do, in addition to the medical supplies and the medications, we do these ad hoc projects. And we'll talk about this latest one, this art show.
Yes, I wanted to get into that. If you could first describe your connection to Ukraine, and then if you can get into describing the show and how the listeners can donate to that or find out more information about the event.
So I have a direct connection to Ukraine. Both my parents were Ukrainians, came here after World War II. I grew up in this country, went to school here, went to the Army and back to school and got married and live in New Haven. But I have relatives in Ukraine, and I have communicated with them on a regular basis. And the last time I was in Ukraine, I actually met my cousin and some of his family and my uncles, and so I have a direct connection to Ukraine.
And so what part of the country are they in?
It's in the southeastern area of Ukraine near Romania, not far from the Romanian border. So I have a direct connection, and when the need arose, the need is ongoing, so it's not like we do one thing and then we pack up our bags and take a break. The need is ongoing, and we're always looking for ways to help, new projects, new initiatives. So we were in Ukraine a couple of times, and one of those times we actually visited this hospital that we're going to talk about with the art show.
Is there near Lviv, the hospital?
No, it's actually, this hospital is about 50 miles due east of Kyiv, so it's in central Ukraine. North central Ukraine.
Okay,
And we actually visited that hospital along with some other hospitals as part of a visit our veterans group put together in Ukraine. And we were there for a veterans forum in Kyiv, and we had a chance to visit some of the soldiers and some of the hospitals.
Wow.
So we were actually at this particular hospital that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
It's a military hospital in central Ukraine, just east of Kyiv.
Yeah, I noticed something interesting in the news today with Kyiv Independent, that the EU is really stepping up, or I guess has been, and really pouring money into the hospital as far as renewing some of their operating rooms and other facilities. there.
Yes. I mean,
So that's good to hear.
That is good to hear, and it is primarily a European war. Although I think the United States has a strong role to play in this as a guarantor, as a force that can make things happen, because the Europeans on their own have not been particularly effective until recently.
Well, I think that's one positive thing about the Trump administration. They step back.
Yes.
Trump has court his relationships with Putin. He's trying to improve and impress upon, and as a result, it's sort of waking up the Europeans. I think that's one positive thing. But on the other hand, I know when I was there in May, it was reported that Russian attacks on Ukraine had gone up 4 times since Trump had been inaugurated. So.
Yes, on the one hand, the president is making statements and expressing his frustration, disappointment. But on the other hand, there's really no forthright, direct action that is being taken. Now, of course, we're not familiar with everything that might be going on behind the scenes, so there may be some pressuring going on of the Europeans, and of course the Europeans are now going to be buying American arms and shipping those to Ukraine on an as-needed basis. So that's definitely progress which will allow Ukraine to defend itself, because a diplomatic solution will not just happen because President Trump wants it to happen. President Putin has mobilized his economy. They're on a war footing. It's not martial law in the country, but it's martial law as far as the Russian economy is concerned, and money is being directed to war, weapons production and armaments, and of course they get support from China and Iran and North Korea, and so it's a full court press, and there's no diplomatic solution that will happen on its own. It will only be when the costs to Putin are great enough that he has to now step back. And one of the things which I think is very heartening is that there's now a focus on the money going into Russia. Russia, as we know, is primarily dependent on petroleum and gas. That's how they get their money, because the economy in Russia is tiny. It's tiny. I mean, people think it's a big superpower, but if you look at the economy of Russia, it's maybe a little bit larger than that of New York State. So it's not an economic powerhouse, and they're dependent on revenues from sales of gas and oil. So President Trump is absolutely correct in pressuring India and Brazil to stop their purchase of Russian oil, because that dries up the revenue that keeps the arms production going in Russia. So that has been a very positive step forward.
And of course what he did last week too, he sort of did a complete about-face, but that's his mode of operation. We say one thing and very indecisive, changes his mind the next.
Yes.
But I guess it was very encouraging in that he said that Ukraine can win this war and regain their occupied territory from the beginning of 2022 with the European
Longer
Union.
term, it's possible. You have to remember that the Baltic countries were annexed in 1940 by the Soviets, and they were dominated by the Soviet Union since 1940 until 1990, and then when there was a change in regime and when the Soviet Union unraveled, the Baltic countries became independent countries. 50 years later, after the Russians invaded and took over Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. So there's always hope and expectation, and I'm glad that President Trump has vocalized that.
Yeah, and the other thing that was interesting too, he mentioned that we would be more willing, the U.S., to share strategic information as far as some of these energy infrastructure related locations are, and possibly even sending long-range missiles. But of course, that's what he says now. Whether it actually happens, hopefully it will.
Yes, to that point, there was a battalion of National Guard that just shipped out of Bradley. They're going to Texas for training, and then they're going to be stationed in the Middle East. But one of their missions when they are deployed overseas is to work with Ukrainians and to learn firsthand how Ukrainian drone technology is being used to counter Russian attacks.
Yeah.
Because this is a direction that is important in terms of
Sure.
warfare, and the U.S.
Yeah.
is looking to Ukraine, which has used that to defend itself, to learn from their experiences, and they're actually going to be doing, the U.S. government is actually signing contracts with Ukrainian drone manufacturers. So that, I think, is going to be a story going forward
Right,
about
right.
how the American military needs to modernize their
Sure. War is
forces.
completely different now, completely different. And they are even a friend of mine, or a contact I have from Canada, he moved to Kyiv, and he's helping develop these drones that will intercept incoming enemy drones through sensing the video waves or whatever it is, too. So it's interesting how the technology is just exploding on it. But let me just get a little more about the event that you have coming up, if you could get into that a little bit too.
Okay, as we mentioned, we visited this hospital, and we're in touch with people in Ukraine and military, non-military, and a few months ago, one of our members of our community came up to us and said that she has a contact in this very hospital in Zhytomyr that we visited, and they need help, and these are soldiers that are being treated. You know, there are different injuries that they have, but many of them have PTSD, a traumatic brain injury. And this woman, Katerina, who's Ukrainian, has a contact, a volunteer who's been working with these soldiers since 2014. Because remember, the war started in 2014. So soldiers from southeastern Ukraine were being brought over for treatment. And this woman, her name is Yulia Tomalcheva. She has a son who's on the front lines serving, and she, as a volunteer, has been helping these soldiers. And she has been delivering supplies, medications to the front lines, to field hospitals, doing whatever she can do in her area. So the idea was to come up with a way to help these soldiers, and now that they're working in this art therapy program, we thought that would be a really good way to do something specifically to help them, to engage them. You know, you can raise money and send it, but I think it's much better to engage these soldiers, use some of their art, sell some of their art, you know, make it personal, get stories about the soldiers and get stories about the artwork. And so that's our intent when we have this art show at the end of the month, to display and to sell some of this art.
Are any of the artists, the Ukrainian military that were wounded and created this art, are any of them actually going to be at the event?
No, they won't be at the event. It's very hard to get out of Ukraine now.
Yeah,
you know, there's a you know, hard stop. If you're a military agent, even if you're wounded, you can't really leave the country. But we're working on a simulcast. Perhaps we can engage them, you know, on the internet, online, and talk to them. These are different soldiers. You know, they come from different backgrounds. In fact, some of the art that we have is actually quite impressive. We have one piece of art that we'll be selling, which was painted by an artist who, when the war started, volunteered to serve in the military, and he got wounded. And now he finds himself in this military hospital being treated, and he is painting what he knows how to paint, because he's an artist. So we have different kinds of art. Some of it is basic, very straightforward. Some of it is a little more sophisticated, advanced. So it'll be a cross-section of different works of art and sculpture. Some pieces of sculpture. So it should be interesting to see.
Yeah. And so you initially reached out to these soldiers through this contact that you have with this lady.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the work you are doing, I certainly, I'm sure everybody certainly admires. It's certainly vital, and it makes a direct impact on so many lives. The Ukrainians I met are very determined. When I was there in Ukraine in May, very determined, and they get a lot of hope by these international volunteers that go over and by these events and so forth. But something like yours is directly impacting lives.
Well,
Which
it's
is
very important,
so
the work that
meaningful.
you've done
Yeah.
and your trips. I mean, this is specific work that helps, but it builds morale, and it builds
Oh yeah.
an understanding that, the world is aware of what's going on. It's not just,
Right. They don't want to be forgotten. They don't want to be, and they appreciate these international volunteers just being there, let alone contributing.
so
Too.
we want to thank you for your ongoing work, because you're always looking for another project
Yeah.
to.
Well, I'll have to talk to you after.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's great. That's thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting us.
Sure. But I also want to thank certainly Community Buzz and SEC Connecticut and the audience. And as far as information that we could give them, the audience right now, as far as donating or finding out about more information, is there a particular email website that this is on?
We can give you both. We have a Facebook page where you can donate through a QR code on the Facebook page. It's called New Haven, Connecticut Ukrainian American Humanitarian Aid Fund. So if you Google that, it'll take you to our Facebook page. Let me repeat it: New Haven, Connecticut Ukrainian American Humanitarian Aid Fund. So that's for donations, and you'll see some samples of the art that will be exhibited and sold. If you want to reach out for more information, welcome to do that to me or to Carl. My email is my first initial and last name, mmelyk@yahoo.com. mmelyk@yahoo.com. Be happy to send you brochures, flyers. We've been actively disseminating information. You may have seen some of these postings. We have brochures, we have flyers, we have presence on social media, not only on Facebook, but also on Instagram, where you can also donate. So we encourage people to support us, to come to this event. This event will have art for sale, but it will also have some entertainment. We have some music, and we have some dancers who will actually be performing. And of course, we have some Ukrainian food that you can sample or take home with you. So it should be a pleasant afternoon. It's from 12 noon to 6 p.m. on Sunday, the 26th.
Okay, well, thank you again. Thank you very much for your time and coming in, and certainly all your efforts. And again, I'm Bob Spang. I thank the audience, and don't forget about Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you.